Ransom Riggs' book titled Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children came out in 2011 and immediately made it onto the New York Times bestseller list, garnering much acclaim everywhere. The main saga consists of 6 books: Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, Hollow City, Library of Souls, A Map of Days, The Conference of the Birds, The Desolations of Devil's Acre. Renowned director Tim Burton wanted to make a film adaptation from the first of these books. In the film, there are all the famous dark and gothic settings typical of the director, but there are several differences from the book, also aimed at making the film self-contained rather than making it a film saga out of it. Let's start with the plot. Jacob is a teenager living in Florida who grew up accompanied by the fantastical stories of his grandfather, who always told him about living in a very special orphanage in Wales. Under the careful guidance of Miss Peregrine, the home would have been inhabited by special boys and children with magical powers, invisibility, superhuman strength, and so on. Jacob's task will be to find out whether these stories are true or not. As I mentioned earlier, there are some minor changes in the film, but some of them prompt one to wonder why Barton, or rather screenwriter Jane Goldman, decided to change these particular things. One such detail lies in the characters of Olive and Emma, whose names are reversed, always making Emma the love interest of Jacob. The latter thus has the powers and features of the Olive of the book, with the name and character of the Emma of the book. The director's comment on this was, "We swapped the characters of Emma and Olive, with Ransom's permission. Cinematically, I thought it worked more. The image of Emma hovering in the air is wonderful. It seemed more poetic to me. True love is hard to catch." I cannot blame the director and screenwriter too much for this choice, as the scenes they managed to achieve playing with Emma Olive's elemental powers of air are nothing short of wonderful, especially as a visual impact. His romance with Emma, however, is described in the book as a mature and self-conscious relationship, while in the film it appears as a mere teenager crush, perhaps justifiable by the fact that the film is aimed at a much younger target audience than the book, which is described as a young adult. Speaking of characters, Jacob's best and only friend has been completely removed from the film, but this may simply be a way to save running time that would otherwise be wasted given the little impact he leaves even in the book. In this way, however, Jacob's character immediately takes on a solitary air, whereas in the book, he tends to isolate himself only after the loss of his grandfather, an isolation that will lead him, along with Dr. Gollan's recommendations, to make the trip to Wales. Another change, a minor one but one that does not go unnoticed, concerns the protagonist's psychiatrist, Dr. Gollan. In the book, he is in fact a man, while in the film, he is a woman who only later on assumes his true male form. This confuses the viewer reader, since this change does not seem to be justified in any way and ends up being very much an end in itself, almost as if it were a purely stylistic choice. Let us come to the most blatant change, namely the one concerning Jacob. In the book, he is a cheeky and also quite sarcastic teenager, characteristics totally lost in the film, where he is presented as an unfortunate and naive boy from the start. In the book, in fact, Jacob changes a great deal after the death of his beloved grandfather Abraham, but his wry, biting verb remains alive. There have also been changes in the date of the time loop. In the book, it is September 3rd, 1940, while in the film, it is 1943, and in historical terms, this is definitely a big change. Also, in the loop, the hologats or hollows cannot enter, but it seems that in the film, this is instead possible. Speaking of villains, how can we not mention the character played by Samuel L. Jackson? In the book, the main antagonist is scary and serious, but in the film, he appears somewhat caricatured, and the final battle between him and all other children is quite different from the one narrated, a battle that takes place only between the villain, Jacob, and a few others. I believe that Barton has created an excellent product. which departs from the book to facilitate a cinematic narrative, which is very smooth, while still managing to make this work extremely akin to his style. These are brief remarks on the difference between the book and the film, all of which I enjoyed and which left me with excellent memories.